Before I tell you this story, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications if you love adult romance, complicated relationships, forbidden love, shocking secrets, and stories where nothing is ever what it seems. Because tonight's story begins with a woman who thought she knew the man she married. Until one night, she received a message from a stranger. Just 4 words. "You don't know him." She stared at the screen. At first, she thought it was a cruel joke. Then, another message arrived. "Ask him about the Blue Room." She had never heard of a Blue Room, but there was something about those words that made her heart pound. Her husband was asleep beside her. The man she had loved for 8 years, the man who kissed her forehead every morning before leaving for work, the man who held her close when she couldn't sleep, the man who had promised her, "There will never be secrets between us." Ella wanted to wake him. She wanted to turn on the light and demand an explanation. But instead, she quietly got out of bed. She walked downstairs, and for the first time in 8 years, she opened the locked drawer in his study. Inside was a key, a photograph, and a hotel receipt dated only 3 days earlier. Ella's hands began to shake, because the name printed on the receipt wasn't hers, and that was the moment she realized something terrifying. The man she had spent years loving might have been living another life right in front of her. But what Ella didn't know was that the truth wasn't simply about another woman. It was about a promise made long before their marriage. A promise her husband had never intended to break, and by the time Ella discovered what the Blue Room meant, she would have to make the hardest decision of her life: stay with the man she loved, or walk away from the only person who had ever made her feel truly alive. My name is Ella, and before you judge the woman in this story, you need to understand something. I wasn't looking for love when I met Adrian. I was 27, independent, focused on my career, and completely convinced that relationships were something people complicated for themselves. Then, Adrian walked into my life. It was raining the evening we met. I had been standing outside a small cafe, trying desperately to keep my documents dry beneath my coat. A car stopped beside me. The window came down. A man's voice said, "You're going to get soaked." I looked inside. He was smiling. Not arrogantly, not flirtatiously, just warmly. I laughed. "I think I've already accepted my fate." He stepped out of the car and held an umbrella over me. "Then at least let me help you survive it." I should have walked away. Instead, I smiled, and that was the beginning. We talked for nearly 2 hours that night about everything: our childhoods, our ambitions, our fears, the things we wanted from life. And somehow, talking to him felt effortless. There was no pretending, no trying to impress each other, just 2 strangers sitting across from each other, slowly becoming something neither of them expected. Over the following months, Adrian became part of my everyday life. He knew how I liked my coffee. He knew which songs made me smile. He knew when I was pretending to be okay, and somehow, he always knew when I needed him. Our relationship wasn't perfect, but it was real. At least, that's what I believed. He proposed to me one winter evening. There were no cameras, no expensive restaurant, no crowd. Just the 2 of us standing on the balcony of our apartment while snow fell outside. He took my hand. "Ella?" I looked at him. He was nervous. "I've spent my whole life thinking I would recognize the moment when I found the person I wanted to grow old with." He paused. "Then you came along." My eyes filled with tears. "And now I don't want to imagine growing old without you." He opened the ring box. "Will you marry me?" I didn't answer immediately. I just stared at him. Then I whispered, "Yes." He pulled me into his arms, and for a few seconds, the entire world disappeared. I thought that moment would be the beginning of our forever. I never imagined it would also become one of the memories I would later question the most. Our wedding was beautiful. Nothing extravagant, just family, close friends, music, flowers, and the people we loved. When Adrian looked at me as I walked toward him, I saw the same man from that rainy evening, the same smile, the same eyes, the same person I had fallen in love with. He whispered, "You look beautiful." I smiled. "You're shaking." He laughed, "Because I'm terrified." "Of what?" "Of how much I love you." I laughed through my tears. Then we exchanged our vows, and I believed every word. For the first few years, marriage was everything I had hoped it would be. We traveled, built a home, had dinner together almost every night. We argued about silly things, made up before bed, and sometimes, when Adrian thought I was asleep, he would pull me closer. Those little moments meant more to me than expensive gifts ever could. But somewhere around our 5th year together, something changed. Not dramatically, not overnight, just slowly. Adrian started working later. He became protective of his phone. He stopped talking about certain parts of his day, and occasionally, he would disappear for hours without explanation. Whenever I asked where he had been, he always had an answer. Work. A client. A meeting. Nothing sounded suspicious enough to accuse him, so I didn't. Because when you love someone, you don't want to become the person who sees betrayal everywhere. I trusted him. Until one evening, I saw him standing outside a restaurant with another woman. They weren't kissing. They weren't holding hands. But the way he looked at her made my stomach turn. It wasn't the way a married man should look at another woman. It was familiar, intimate, like there was history between them. I stayed inside my car, watching. The woman said something. Adrian smiled. Then she touched his arm. He didn't move away. My heart sank. I wanted to get out. I wanted to confront him. Instead, I drove home. When Adrian arrived an hour later, I was sitting in the living room. He kissed my forehead. "You okay?" I looked into his eyes. "Where were you?" He didn't hesitate. "At the office." That answer hurt more than seeing him with her, because now I knew he had lied. For several weeks, I tried to convince myself that there was an innocent explanation. Maybe she was a client. Maybe I had misunderstood. Maybe Adrian was protecting someone from a difficult situation. Maybe. But then came the message. It arrived at 1:17 in the morning, was lying beside Adrian. His breathing was slow. His phone was on the nightstand. My own phone vibrated. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the words. "You don't know him." I sat up. Another message arrived. "Ask him about the blue room." My heart started beating faster. I looked at Adrian. He was still asleep. I typed, "Who are you?" The message was seen immediately. No answer. Then another photograph appeared. It showed Adrian standing outside an old hotel. Beside him was the same woman I had seen at the restaurant. I stared at the picture. The date was 6 months earlier. Then another message appeared. "Tomorrow, 9 p.m. Room 214. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Adrian kissed me goodbye as usual. "I'll see you tonight." I watched him leave. Then I looked at the photograph again. Room 214, blue room. There was only one hotel I could think of. An old hotel downtown, a place Adrian had once mentioned during the early years of our relationship. He had told me he hated the place. Now I wondered, why? I arrived at the hotel at 8:45. My hands were cold. My mind was racing. I almost turned around. Then I saw the room number. I saw the room number. I stood outside the door for several seconds. Finally, I knocked. A woman opened it. The same woman. She looked at me, and instead of appearing surprised, she looked relieved. "You came." I stared at her. "Who are you?" She stepped aside. "Come in." I entered. The room was painted blue, not dark blue, a soft, faded blue. There were photographs on the wall, dozens of them, and every photograph contained Adrian, but some were decades old. He was younger, much younger, and standing beside him was a little boy who looked exactly like him. I turned toward the woman. "Who is that?" She looked at the photograph. "His brother." I froze. "Adrian never told me he had a brother." The woman nodded. "I know." Then she handed me an envelope. "He didn't tell you many things." I opened it. Inside was a letter, Adrian's handwriting. My hands began trembling. I read the first line. "Dear Ella." I stopped breathing. He had written this letter for me, but I had never seen it. The woman watched me carefully. "Read it," I continued, and the first sentence changed everything. "If Ella ever finds this letter, it means I failed to tell her the truth myself." I looked up. "What truth?" The woman didn't answer. She simply said, "Keep reading." The letter explained something Adrian had hidden from me for years. Before he met me, his family had been falling apart. His father had disappeared. His mother had become seriously ill, and Adrian had been left responsible for his younger brother, Lucas. Lucas wasn't just his brother. He was his identical twin. The two had grown up inseparable.